This was Forbes magazine's cover in 2007, headlining "Can anyone catch the cell phone king?", meaning the Nokia. The spectacular success of Nokia in 1998, company surpassed Motorola and became the world's top mobile phone maker in 9 years onwards. Nokia's net sales increased over 50% year on year, and all of a sudden one person came revolutionizing mobile phone industry, and that person was Steve Jobs. Nokia was already in steady decline before Apple launching its first generation iPhone in 2007. Steve Jobs caught the perfect time, and in 2008, Android version 1.0 was launched. Nokia's Q3 profits nosedived with 30%. Meanwhile, iPhone sales skyrocketed by around 330% during the same period, and the market was slowly being taken over by the likes of Apple, BlackBerry, and Samsung. The Finnish company's unwillingness to embrace drastic change and innovation when it was required the most was probably the biggest reason that brought the mobile giant down. The company took way too long to embrace the smartphone revolution, and when it finally did, it made way too many errors in its strategy. Anyway, as I say, nothing is permanent and whatever goes up must come down. Now we have 5 companies that are in the same place as Nokia was. And they are Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and Facebook. All these 5 companies are dominating in their respective fields and somehow competing with each other. Empires rise and they fall, and which of these 5 companies is to fall first? Now let's get into it. One way to analyze the competition and future projections is by using Porter's 5 forces model. It's regarded understanding both the competitive forces and overall industry structure. In Porter's model, the 5 forces that shape industry competition are: the first, competitive rivalry, how intense the competition is in the marketplace; the second, supplier power, how much power a business supplier has over the product prices; and the third, the power of the consumer and their effect on pricing and quality; and the fourth, threat of substitution, how easy it is for consumers to switch from business's product or service to that of a competitor; and the last one, the threat of new entrants, how easy or difficult it is for competitors to join the marketplace. So let's begin with the Amazon. Amazon is one of the most valuable companies in the world as of 2018. Amazon is an e-commerce behemoth. It has a tremendous number of subsidiaries. They recently have bought Souk.com, the largest e-commerce platform in the Middle East. Twitch also belongs to an Amazon, and all other book-related websites. Amazon's revenue mainly comes from selling products online and ads. The good thing about Amazon is that they have an aggressively monopolistic business model and very versatile at the same time. And this has been a success over their expansion on Amazon Prime Video and Amazon Web Services. Companies that are worth more than $1 billion, or unicorns as they call them, can easily set up their own data centers and have the budget. However, they still prefer to use Amazon Web Services for the most of their hosting needs. In case if Amazon Web Services disappears overnight, so are Netflix, Spotify, NASA, Adobe, Airbnb, and many other large companies. Banks, oil companies, government agencies, they all go offline as well. Amazon is not just the largest online retailer, but it's the largest cloud computing platform in the world. In 2017, Amazon's video production budget was $4.5 billion. That's 2 times HBO's budget. If you look at the numbers and charts, their revenue streams, Amazon is relatively diverse and still evolving. Total revenue in 2016 was $136 billion and net income was $2 billion. The margin is very low at 2%. This is the weakest part of the Amazon. They don't actually make that much money compared to other giants. But it's really hard to penetrate and destroy Amazon. They have an enormous logistics chain, and if they face any political pressure, Jeff Bezos owns Washington Post. He will counterattack and will get his voice heard. The next giant is Microsoft. Microsoft is a tough nut to crack. It survived the US government trying too hard to break it. It survives the Great Firewall of China, something other US companies have not been able to. It survived a concrete attack by almost everyone else in the tech business. It survived Steve Ballmer, for God's sake. Microsoft is extremely diversified. It has LinkedIn, Xbox, Windows, Office product lineup, cloud services, and many other sources of revenue. It has the monopoly in the desktop OS. 82% of the world's desktop users use Windows. Why we don't hear about the Microsoft quite often is because they have mostly B2B business model. They mostly sell their products to other businesses and governments. In 2016, the total revenue was $85 billion and the net profit was $17 billion. The profit margin is 20%. Now let's compare it to Amazon. Microsoft is 8.5 times more profitable than the Amazon. The revenue streams of these both companies really shows how diversified the Microsoft is. Hypothetically speaking, if we cut the biggest sources of revenue of both companies, which are Office products and Amazon retail, well, it will hurt Microsoft and it's going to be very painful. but they will survive. They have other sources to keep up the business. But if Amazon retail goes down, the company will be left with peanuts. But I highly doubt with a guy like Jeff Bezos it will ever happen. The biggest weakness of Microsoft that it's comparatively slow in innovation. Buying a corpse of Nokia for $5 billion and failure of Windows phones, it should be a wake-up slap in the face. This kind of pace in making innovation is very unhealthy when the tech industry is growing exponentially. And the next one is Alphabet, the parent company of Google. Alphabet owns Google and as well as 200 more other companies dedicated to AI, venture capital, healthcare, driverless cars, and many others. However, Google itself owns companies like YouTube, Android, Search, AdSense, and so on. This is how basically Alphabet expands. They are great strategists in acquiring small companies. The reach of this technology giant is so vast it's hard to imagine an area of modern life it has not touched. The backbone and the heart of the alphabet is Google. These small subsidiaries dedicated to research in certain subjects are also provide complementary resources to Google to improve its mechanics. Worth to mention that Google is the frontrunner in AI development and has a monopoly in search, mobile OS, and online videos. If you look at the numbers, in 2016, Alphabet's total revenue was $90 billion and the profit was $19 billion. So the margin is 17%. But in terms of revenue sources, the Alphabet is heavily reliant on an advertisement. 88% of their revenue comes from ads, 11% comes from Google Play, Pixel phones, and Android, and only 1% is from Alphabet's other subsidiaries apart from Google. This is the weakest part of the Alphabet. They have a monolithic stream of revenue and profit. But the fact that it has a monopoly in browsing and search, there isn't anyone, not a single competitor, who can dethrone Google from the top of its pyramid, unless the new way of viewing the internet will be invented. Additionally, one way that Google might fall is from political pressure. It's also heavily reliant on our personal data. Well, Google knows about us better than we ourselves. Given the importance of the data and how governments are elected and toppled with it, there will be increasing regulations in the following years. And the next giant is Apple. Apple was the first trillion-dollar company, the most valuable brand in the world according to Forbes magazine. One thing that has been reason for the Apple's success is that they are extremely focused on their products. They don't buy small companies to expand. One noticeable acquisition of Apple was Beats Electronics for $3 billion. And the numbers of Apple are pretty impressive. In 2016, they had $216 billion in revenue, $46 billion in profit. The margin is 21%. If you look at the revenue streams, Apple is dependent on iPhones. 63% of their revenue comes from only one product. One thing that is fascinating about Apple is that they have a tremendous brand loyalty and image. Not everybody, don't get me wrong, but the majority and mainly in Asia, people don't buy iPhones because of its specs and configs. They buy it because it's an iPhone. It has become a social status for people, and Apple is milking their customers with high prices and leveraging their brand power. Apple has made $1,000 phones as a new norm and $750 phone as a budget phone. But you gotta give it to Apple, they have an amazing and yet addictive ecosystem. Considering the phone and hardware market is extremely competitive and newcomers like OnePlus, Xiaomi, Huawei are making the phones the same specs and even much more innovative than iPhones, but in the range of $300 to $500. Apple is swimming against the big tides and their customer base is shrinking. For instance, one of these phones is iPhone 6 and the other one is iPhone 8. One of them is launched in 2014 and the other one is launched in 2017. Visually, it's really hard to tell any difference. iOS is so good that they virtually work the same as well. The same sequence is happening with the iPhone 10 and 10s lines. It seems to me as though Apple is specifically stretching the process of innovation, bringing up the same products with a little improvements, with fancy sounding processor names, just to gain more money on a yearly basis from their loyal customers. As of late 2018, Apple's market cap has fallen 20%. Apple is not reporting anymore how many iPhones they have sold, but they'll just announce the revenues. It indicates they're not selling that many iPhones than they used to, but their pricey products are keeping their revenue intact. Apple doesn't have a significant monopoly in anything. It only holds 18% of smartphone market share, and that's their main source of revenue. And if they don't reconsider their prices, they might turn into a next BlackBerry. Having said all this, Apple still has $260 billion in cash. If they fail, they just need to make one perfect innovative product with proper price, and they can easily regain all their customers back. The last giant in our list is Facebook. Facebook is probably the most fragile company among 5. Recently, Facebook is hitting headlines. People are exposing Facebook's dark business principles. It has the monopoly of social media though. Facebook's most successful steps has been acquiring Instagram and WhatsApp, and they are completely dependent on ads. 97% of Facebook's revenue comes from advertising. It does not have any hardware to make like Google, another advertising mogul. In 2016, Facebook had $28 billion in revenue and $10 billion in profit. The margin is 36%. This is very impressive numbers for a social media website. But with the recent cases like Cambridge Analytica letting fake news in Myanmar, which sparked brutal violence against minorities, and privacy issues, people are losing trust on Facebook. Being completely dependent on ads and currently facing privacy issues, if anything like Cambridge Analytica happens again, Facebook will be hurt badly. Now, mostly in developed countries, not using Facebook is becoming a trend. Social media is extremely fluid, easily replaceable, and based on trends. This is how basically social media companies grow. They see the fast-changing trends and adapt quickly. But when the trend itself is dumping Facebook, this is when poop hits a fan. There are already young people that will not touch Facebook, and a lot of adults are growing wary of it as well. It has become a place where people ask for bobs and vegas. I mean seriously, not a single celebrity personally uses Facebook, maybe Instagram, but Instagram is filled with annoying ads, mostly wannabe influencers who pay money to Instagram to boost up their pages. This is what overall Facebook is about. Finally, my own analysis. The first one to fall is Facebook. Social media change fast, but if Facebook is to fall, it will not happen overnight as long as people in highly populated countries like in Indian subcontinent in Southeast Asia are using it. The second to fall is Apple. Their reliance on iPhones puts them in very risky place. Apple is swimming against a lethal tide. When everything is getting cheaper and stronger, Apple is doing the vice versa, and I think it will backfire. The only thing that is holding the Apple is their unbelievably strong brand image and people who are heavily invested in Apple ecosystem. The third one to fall is Google. Google is the company that can read the fast changes and adapt quickly. That's why they have the monopoly in search browsing for 20 years, slaying all the competitors. Sometimes Google has an Apple syndrome. Their overpriced Google glasses, not very much looking Pixel phones. Well, it's ironic when these trillion-dollar companies who have the most money like Apple and Google are making the ugliest phones possible, and newcomers like OnePlus and Huawei, Oppo are making really slick-looking and innovative phones. The fourth one to fall is Amazon. E-commerce is not going anywhere, and Amazon is evolving. Amazon is the #1 e-commerce site in the world, #1 cloud platform provider in the world as well. Even though they're not making that much money, their business model is very unique. They will go bankrupt anyway. Even Jeff Bezos himself told his employees last week that their company will eventually die and their task is to prolong that deadline. The last one to fall is Microsoft. Microsoft might fall when someone invents more convenient desktop OS and persuades 82% of the world's desktop users to switch them. In the meantime, Microsoft will not be smoking nervously in the corner. They will fight back. Even if that fails, they have other many sources of revenue. Microsoft will be around for quite a long time. In conclusion, if these companies are to fall, they will not disappear overnight. It will be very slow and eventually they will morph into other stronger companies of their time, just like Nokia. We will be hearing from these companies for quite a long time. The original video was about more than half an hour. I had to cut many parts and details. I tried to do as concise and comprehensive as possible. What do you think, which of these 5 companies are going to fall in the order? Leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. And guys, help me to do this full time and support this channel on Patreon. Thanks for watching and subscribe.